Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington. We're on the verge of Masters Week here. We're Saturday morning. Houston Open wrapping up, and an extremely high scoring tournament going on there.
Yeah, you surprisingly, a lot of the big names are playing well at the Houston, which will make the ownership projections for the Masters very interesting. You got Fowler, Spieth, and also Justin Rose being up there, and Stenson as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend at the Houston Open, and I just cannot wait for the Masters to begin.
And looking at this Masters pricing, it's a little loose. You get a lot of obviously top names up there, but we've seen tournaments where we've seen several guys over the 11K mark. You just got Dustin Johnson there, and a lot of big names in that 9 to 8K range as well.
Yeah, this is the week where I guess you can just basically pick and choose the guys who you think will do very well for the Masters. At the top, I mean, it's very hard to fade Dustin and fade Thomas, but for me, I think that's going to be the play for this week, just because I really don't know what to make of them, especially Thomas. It does look like that he's going to be the guy to beat for the Masters, but with his so-so finishes the last 2 years at the Masters, for 10-8, I just cannot pick a guy who I don't think is going to win. And yeah, I think that's the reason for fading the top two. You got a lot of guys in the middle that have a really good chance of winning.
Yeah, you definitely do. It's a little bit harder for me to look at some of these top guys and go, I want to fade you for the ownership, because like obviously DJ is going to be popular. Thomas's recent form, I'm curious to see how, if that drives his ownership not up or not. But I mean, come off a win at the Honda, second at Mexico, like Thomas is just playing so well this year. I don't know. He's kind of a tough fade for me. Like I think I have to get some exposure to at least Johnson or Thomas, even at some higher ownership, just because that potential win is there for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the stats for Thomas, he's basically in the top 10 in the field for four of the stats that I'm looking at. That would be driving distance, that would be proximity, strokes gain, approach to the green, and also birdie or better percentage. And the other two stats, the strokes gain around the green and par 5 scoring, he's basically in the top 30 for both of those. So for the most part, I think, like you said, with his recent form entering this week and the fact that he made the cut here the last 2 years, I think Thomas might be the most popular option for these 10K plus guys. And if he is, that's just giving me another reason just to fade Thomas for the week.
And then when you look at the other couple guys here, I mean, you have Jordan Spieth, Tiger Woods, and then that's it for double-digit salary players. What are your thoughts on Spieth this week? A guy who's playing well this weekend. I mean, I don't know what to do with Spieth. I think Spieth's the guy I don't know what to do with.
Yeah, if you look at Spieth's course history, I mean, it's almost an auto play just to play him. I mean, he's had a first, 2 runner-up finishes, and then he finished 11th last year. And then if you look at his recent form, I mean, yeah, he missed the cut at Feldspar, but he had 2 top 15s the 2 tournaments before that. And then he's playing well at Houston this week. So, and I think it's all depending on where he finishes this week in Houston to see where his ownership will be. But overall, I think he's going to be around that 20% mark. I think a lot of people are jumping on that wagon where his putting might come around and he might actually do well this week. And I'm going to be one of those people. I think I'm going to start my lineups with Spieth, and then I'm just going to go with Tiger right underneath him, just because Tiger's playing well right now, which is good to see, especially coming off his latest back surgery. And also, I did hear a rumor that Tiger did change his shaft in his driver, and after doing that, he played 36 holes at Augusta, and he only missed one fairway in those 36 holes. So, if that rumor is true, then I'm definitely going to be overweight on Tiger, just because I think he's going to be popular as well, as much as Spieth. I'm hoping that people are going to get in that mindset where, yeah, he's going to be 35, 40% owned, and I'm going to fade him. And then come Thursday morning, he's going to be like less than 15%. Just because what happened to DJ at the earlier this year, where a lot of people thought that he was going to be popular, but it ended up being not the case. So I'm kind of hoping that will happen for Tiger, but that's it's not likely the case. But I think he's going to win this week, so I'm just going to be overweight on him no matter what.
I think when you look at it, like as far as ownership guys go, like I think the most guys that I'm inclined to fade is probably Tiger and Spieth. Not that I think Spieth is going to be terribly popular, but he's still going to be enough just because he's Spieth. And then you got Woods, of course, and yeah, you can hope the other touts out there are going to be driving down ownership because they're saying they're fading, but I just don't know. Like it's still Tiger here. Like the ownership's been climbing each week. I think that continues. I rather make a pivot and kind of keep going a little bit lower and potentially look at maybe like a Rahm as kind of that GPP play in this range, because I just think when you look like I'm not a big Jason Day guy. You just never know what you're going to get out of him. He has been playing well over his last few tournaments, but obviously hasn't been playing a ton. I think Rahm's my guy, is like my GPP guy, just because I don't think he's going to garnish a ton of ownership. Like I think, maybe around 10, 15%. Like you can possibly get Rahm at, which just seems insane to me.
Yeah, he's definitely value at 9,300. As for me, I think I'd rather go to Rory McIlroy, just underneath Tiger. I mean, if you look at Rory's stats, he's first in the field, obviously, for driving distance, and he's 10th in the field for proximity. And if you look at his course history here, he's made 4 straight top 10s in the last 4 years. And this is the one major where Rory needs to win in order to get the career Grand Slam. So that's the motivation that he has at the Masters. And I think with Rory's win at the Arnold Palmer definitely gave him a lot of confidence entering the Masters. So his ownership is going to be interesting come Wednesday night. I mean, with Tiger being above Rory, with Phil, with Rose being cheaper than him, I'm not saying he's going to be overlooked, but I think he's going to be around that 15%. And I think a lot of these 9K guys will be more spread out, with the exception of Justin Rose and Phil Mickelson, because I think those two will be the most popular plays.
Yeah, and what are you doing with like a Mickelson or Day? Because I don't want to skip over them, but they're not terribly high on my list of guys that I'm using this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on Jason Day. Yeah, he has good course history here, but I'm usually not on him for most weeks. So there's really no reason for me to start now. So if you look at his stats, I mean, yeah, he has decent stats entering this week, but I'm just going to fade Jason Day. And for Phil, it's a little scary to fade him, knowing his course history here, and with his win at the WGC, I think at 9,500, he should be the most popular play in the 9,000 range, and then I think Rose would be the next highest owned in this range as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, like there are going to be some popular selections in here, but I think there's just this is an area where I'm not necessarily more inclined to kind of fading because like you have Justin Rose as a core play in your article. I like him a lot. Like you said, he just feels underpriced for the way he's playing. Stats kind of rise up. He's excellent course history here. Hasn't finished outside the top 10 over the last 3 years. Rose is that guy. Like I think he's going to be 20%, and you just kind of got to eat it here.
Yeah, pretty much. Like he's going to be that one of the few guys I'm considering just basically putting it in every lineup and just not overthink it. If you look at his recent form, he's basically 5 top 10s, including a win at the WGC. I think back in November, I believe it was. Yeah, he's still on form. And then the last couple of weeks, I've been saying I think the Masters will be Rose's redemption year. After losing in the playoff with Garcia last year, you know that he's close. And I think with his form coming in for this week, it's almost a no-brainer. Just pick him. Don't overthink it. He should make the cut, and then it'll be a nice bet for like a top 10, top 5 finish with hopefully contending on the back nine on Sunday.
Before we kind of get into like the Paul Casey and Bubba Watson and those names, Fowler like 9K, playing well this week. Looked a little bit better at the Arnold Palmer. Like Fowler's a guy who still drives ownership just based on name, but I don't think he's going to be terribly high owned. I just don't see a ton of upside. Like I think his like maybe top 12, like or 12 to 15 range is kind of like where I can see him finishing as a ceiling. Like I don't think he has it to crack a top 10 here, like with these names. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't see him playing well at Augusta, but I think when you go for the ownership angle, I think it all depends if he wins at the Houston Open or not. If he wins, then that will be good for me because more people will play Ricky. Then they'll play Rose. So if he wins, I would say Ricky will be basically overtaking Rose for the highest owned golfer in the 9,000. He'll be pretty close with Phil. But if he doesn't win, then I think maybe around that 15%, 13% ownership for him, just because a lot of people are going to play Paul Casey. They're going to play Bubba Watson with his recent form. And yeah, I just don't see Ricky winning this week at all. So I think I'm going to take a stance on fading him for the week.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, when you get to Casey, Bubba Watson, like cash games, like those two are extremely tough fades at those prices. You can go balanced all the way this week. We were talking. This is an area where I may start to leave some cash on the table and kind of build in this range where, yeah, some of them are going to be a little bit chalky, but a lot of people are going to still be pairing them with super studs up top. So I think a balanced approach here with this 9 to 8K range and mixing maybe a 7 or 2 is intriguing while leaving some money on the table. So I'm not necessarily scared of playing like guys at high ownership in the Masters here this week. At these prices, like I can make 1 or 2 contrarian moves and still play a Watson or Casey and feel pretty good.
Yeah, if you compare the two guys, I mean, Casey, for example, he's second in the field for par 5 scoring, and he's basically in the top 20 in the field for the 3 other stats that I'm looking at for this week. And with his win at the Felspar, I mean, his run continues with that amazing streak of top 20s. At 8,800 with finishing here in in the top 10 in the last 3 years. And it is really hard to fade him for both cash and tournaments. You could definitely fade him in tournaments, I think, for the ownership purposes, but I think for cash, you just kind of have to lock him in and lock Bubba in because of his recent form, winning twice already this year. And yeah, with his history at Augusta, it's a little too hard to fade him as well. I think if you start off with Casey and Watson for your cash lineup, you're doing pretty good.
Any like guys below him like Garcia, 8,600, Fleetwood. I mean, any interest here? I know we're getting to your guy here coming up, but any interest in those two names?
I think Fleetwood might be a little popular because he's gained that name value where a lot of people know him and they'll just play him. And for Garcia, I do have that thing where I just cannot play the defending champion, no matter how good the price is or how good he's been playing up to this point. I mean, yeah, he has a couple good stats that I'm looking at. He's first in the field for approach the green and 8th in the field for birdie or better percentage. But I think a lot of people will play him. So with that popularity, I think I'm just going to fade those two and go to my guy, Matsuyama.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of surprised Matsuyama's dropped into your core play this week, and I'm kind of surprised because maybe I've just been wrong, but maybe I haven't gotten the right read. I just feel like you've never been a huge Matsuyama fan as far as like a DFS play, but core option this week for you.
Yeah, call it a hunch, I guess. He's made the cut here 3 years in a row. That includes a fifth place finish back in 2015. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's 11th in the field for both approach the green and for strokes gained around the green. And he's also 22nd in the field for driving distance, which I think is going to be a huge stat to look at for the Masters because the course is playing long. I just kind of like Matsuyama because I think a lot of people might be scared with his wrist injury. I mean, he came back at the Arnold Palmer. He made the cut, and I believe he finished just inside the top 50, I want to say. And then he decided to enter the match play event, and he played okay for the 3 days there. Unfortunately, he missed the weekend, but overall, I think Matsuyama's game is getting back into form after having a little time off with his wrist. Before his wrist injury, he was playing very well. So I'm kind of hoping that people are going to get scared with his injury, and maybe that'll be my edge this week. He might not be 100% in my lineups, but he's going to be very close for sure.
Let's talk Noren, 8,100. I feel like everything lines up for him to do well here. I mean, third in par 5 scoring. He's top 20 in birdie or better percentage. I mean, everything's pretty strong. He's top 10 in approach to green. Like, I kind of like Noren here. The miscut last year is obviously a little bit worrisome, but I feel like anytime you play Augusta for the first time is going to be a problem. And, coming into his second year here, I think he's an interesting play. If he ends up being popular, then I'm off of him. But if he ends up kind of being around like the 12% mark, I think that's an interesting price for Noren because I really do think he's my favorite out of kind of that group of like Peters, Leishman, Scott. You got Louis, like Stenson right there. I think Stenson and people will probably still end up playing Scott too, even though it just hasn't been a great fancy option.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on Noren. He's basically the only guy that's making me consider not to go all in on Matsuyama. Noren, with the miscut last year does scare me a little bit, but with his play coming in, I mean, he hasn't missed a cut on tour for the season, and then he has basically a couple top 3 finishes as well. So at 8,100, where he is on the salary, I think he might be overlooked. It really all depends after this week, I think, with some of these players. But overall, I think with not too many people knowing who he is, if I have to guess right now, I think his ownership might be around that 12, maybe closer to 10% mark, just because you got Scott with his good course history here, and you got Louis there, and then Stenson is the guy that everyone's going to be just auto-clicking him with his good play at Houston right now, and with the cheap price at 7,800. Like, he should be where Tiger is, in my opinion. There's no way that he should be less than 8,000 for the Masters this week.
Yeah, it's definitely a misprice on him, and it's like 7,800. Like, he's such an elite guy in this tier. And he's another one where I do have a tough time fading. And I think you can't, like, that's where I think you can look at a Noren, and I think you can look at a Patrick Reed. And yes, those guys do have a little bit of risk to them, but that's kind of the point here. Like, you're making an edge off of Stenson, who is going to be that popular play in this 7K range.
Yeah, and Patrick Reed is also interesting for me as a good pivot option from Stenson, just because he's first in the field for strokes gained around the green. So, I mean, that's really, really solid. Like, guys are going to miss the greens here no matter what. And you're going to need the guys that can get it up and down most of the time. And for him to be number one in that category is really intriguing. I mean, his course history here, it's okay, but I think with Stenson being probably the highest owned golfer, you would think come Thursday morning, I think if you're going to get, let's say, like 1/4 of his ownership with Patrick Reed, I think that's a no-brainer for tournaments. He's definitely an interesting option this week for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And it's where Cantlay kind of popped up like as a guy like with decent stats here, but like I can't pull the trigger on him at 7,600. But he did pop up like well for me here. I don't know why. Like, it was just I was surprised. Like, between Kuchar and these guys, like, he actually rated a little bit higher.
Yeah, with Cantlay, it's a little scary because he hasn't played here in the last 5 years. I know he's played here once before. I forget what year that was, but
it was back in 2011. He did 47th.
Yeah, and I think that's a little too far back to look at course history, trying to figure out who's the best golfers to choose. But I mean, if you just look at stats, yeah, Kentlay's really good overall. Like, he's basically in the top 30 in the field for 4 of the 6 stats that I'm looking at for this week. I think for me, I'm just going to go to Matt Kuchar, like probably what most people are going to go to, just because he is playing well at Houston. He may have found something, and then, yeah, maybe he'll get a top 10 in Houston, and then hopefully he'll start that train again of just racking up top 10s like he used to at 7,600. I mean, he has 3 of them in the last 5 years here. So, yeah, his stats are not that good, but I think with his course history, I think he's almost an auto play for cash games for sure.
Yep, I'm with you there. Harman and Berger are both kind of very similar plays. Like, they don't have a stat that really jumps out at me, but I think they're interesting leverage options off of these guys. I think Finau will get a little bit of buzz, but I think Berger and Harman are 2 of the more interesting kind of GPP options here because, like you said, Kuchar is going to get some love. There are a couple cheaper guys that we can get to, but I think those guys might be the ones I look at the most here in terms of GPP upside.
Yeah, I think of those three, Berger might be the guy for me. He is 14th in the field for par 5 scoring. And then he actually made the cut here at Augusta last 2 years with that's including a top 10 finish in 2016. So with that, I think at 7,500, I think that's a fair price for Berger with this field. His other stats are so. Nothing really stands out other than his par 5 scoring. For some reason, a lot of people are liking Tony Finau, and I really don't know why. Yeah, his stats are good, but I mean, he's a first timer at Augusta, and that seems to be the trend going back to since basically Fuzzy Seller winning, I think in '77, I want to say it was. So for first timers, they just seem to have a real hard time to just make the cut basically and contend. Yeah, you have the exception of like Thomas Peters finishing in the top 5, but for a chance to win or for the chance of them to do well, it's very slim. So in my case, I'm just fading all the first-time players this week.
Yeah, I don't see a ton of. I just don't see him putting well enough to really be in contention. Like, you already throw the fact that he's playing here for the first time, and Finau's just such a guy where we look at him and go, "Oh man, he has so much upside in this course," and then all of a sudden, like, he kind of finishes in that like T30, T20 range. Like, there's certain places where you can use Finau for upside. I just don't think the Masters is one of them.
Yeah, when you look at his stats, I mean, I think one of the things that people are looking at to play him for the Masters is his obviously the driving distance. He's next to Rory in that category, and he's also in the top 5 for strokes gained around the green. So I think with those two stats is making people play Tony Finau. But again, with these greens the way they are, being so undulating, you gotta play there at least once or twice, unless you get really lucky with your putter, just to give yourself a chance to not only make the cut, but to actually contend on Sunday. Again, being a first timer, with Finau's putting being basically average, it's a little hard to pull the trigger for me. Again, he's going to be popular because I see his name popping up on a lot of touts Twitter right now. So as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm just going to fade him, just continue not playing the first timers. And if he makes the cut, then that's great for him. But yeah, I just can't see anything more than that for him.
What are your thoughts on Brendan Grace? Like a name that's usually kind of in that 8 to 9K range. Pretty cheap this week. He's 7,400. Not a great course history here. He's missed 3 of the last 5 cuts, but 27th and 18th on the other 2. Playing well this year. Like, I kind of have some interest in him, but I don't know if he has enough upside really to kind of contend. Like, I could see him kind of being just more of a top 30 guy, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I'm basically seeing the same thing. He's more of like the grinder type player where par is your friend, and depending on the weather entering the Augusta, it does look like it might be low scoring. Like I want to say around 10 under, 12 under might be the winning score. I just can't see Grace getting up there as much. Like, he's more of a U.S. Open type of player, British Open type of player. I mean, he's okay for stats. Like, he's 9th in the field for around the green. But other than that, that's pretty much all that's working for him. He's just an okay, solid player to have a guy to make the cut, and like you said, like a top 30, top 35 finish, and that's it for him. There's really nothing else to say about Brendan Grace.
Anyone else in this lower sevens here? I know you like Charlie Hoffman, but anyone else?
Well, I kind of have to say it, but Adam Hadwin kind of peaks a little bit.
Because he's Canadian?
Yeah, a little biased, but he is Canadian. But I think with Hadwin, he's actually playing. His putter seems to be rounding into form a little bit. I mean, if you look at he played here once before last year, and he made the cut, top 40 finish, and that was good. He got his basically his debut at Augusta out of the way. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's second in the field for around the green, ninth in the field for approach to the green. So with his putter coming into form, I kind of like Hadwin for GPPs down here at 7,200. He should make the cut, and maybe his putter gets hot, and he'll get you like a top 10 finish, maybe even a top 5.
And I know you were looking at Hoffman's a cash game guy for you. Ross Fisher's a GPP guy for you down in this range.
Yeah, Hoffman is that guy where he seems to have this course figured out. He made the cut here the last 3 years. That includes a T9 finish back in 2015, I believe. And then if you look at his stats, I mean, he's third in the field for proximity. And he's also, which is a little surprising, but he's 15th in the field for par 5 scoring. With having 4 par 5s on the course, it's definitely vital for your guys to make the eagles, make the birdies on those holes, because they're pretty much the easier holes to get at, other than maybe the 8th hole, the par 5. But the other 3 should be gettable. And then for Ross Fisher, I mean, he's a little too cheap. I think he's ranked 35th in the world right now. So with him being down here at 7,000, that's just good value, in my opinion. He made the cut here, just like Hadwin last year, a 41st place finish for him. And then, yeah, if you look at his stats again, I mean, he's 5th in the field for approach to the green, and then he's in the top 30 in the field for 3 other stats that I'm looking at. And I think at 7,000 for Ross Fisher, not too many people, I think, will play him, knowing that Zach Johnson is like right there. You've got Ryan Moore, Molinari right next to him. So I think Fisher might be that guy he'll be overlooked a little bit, and hopefully his putter will get hot, and then he might contend on Sunday.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned, like, when you look and go, oh, there's Ryan Moore, like, I think people might look at him and go, oh, he finished top 10 last year, and then play him just because of that, and that's it.
Yeah, and again, he's the name what a lot of people know as well. Same with Zach Johnson, who won here way back, I think in 2007, I think it was, or 2008.
Awful ever since at the Masters.
Yeah, I think he just got lucky with the weather that year, and that he laid up on all the par 5s, managed to do well. But overall, I think people will see his name, they'll see Ryan Moore, and then hopefully that will give me an edge with Fisher being in between those 2 guys, and maybe, hopefully that those the other two will miss the cut or not play well, and Fisher will be in this inside the top 15. That's the hope that you pick for these guys down here. If you're not going to go with the more popular plays, I guess.
Below 7K, I think two names that kind of pop up. Well, I mean, I guess there's a couple, but Brendan Steele, Bryson DeChambeau, two guys that we're talking about a little bit before the show. Both below 7K, but definitely have some upside here.
Yeah, both of them. I really don't know what to do with Bryson yet. I play him 1 week, he WDs because of a bad back. The next week I don't play him, and then he almost won that week. So I really don't know what to do with him yet. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's basically inside the top 20 in the field in 5 of the stats that I'm looking at, including par 5 scoring where he's first in the field. So that's intriguing. And he played here once before in 2016, making the cut just outside the top 20. And then, yeah, going back to Brendan Steele, he was pretty much our guy last year for most of the season. And if you look at his stats, yeah, he seems to be coming into form. He's top 10 in the field for driving distance. He's in the top 20 for birdie or better percentage. And he finished top 30 here last year. So at 6,900, I think this is where the ownership might start spreading out even more. Like you might get Steele around 5 or 6% just because people know the name. But yeah, I think Steele is probably good for cash and for tournaments. And I think Bryson might be that tournament option for sure, just because he is so volatile. Just the way he plays. And yeah, just for what happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think both those guys are interesting. Like I'm going to be working them in and out of a few lineups, just because they're below 7K but have top 20 upside, and I like them here. Anyone else below those names that really catch your eye?
Not really. I mean, if you want to play one of these old guys, I think Vijay Singh might have an edge. He hasn't been playing well on the PGA Tour as of late, but he has gotten to say that this year will be his year to basically evaluate his game after the Masters. Just to basically see where he stands. He's gone also to saying that before he hasn't really had that struggle to make the cut, and then if all of a sudden, if that is his game right now, just trying to make the cut and not trying to win, then he's thinking of having maybe 1 or 2 more chances at the Masters, but you might be considering not playing on the PGA Tour that often anymore. So maybe that might be his motivation to make the cut and maybe be like a Bernhard Langer a couple years ago to have that chance on Sunday. Other than that, I think Steele might be the cheapest guy I go to this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, like, for me, just given the fact that plays Steele and DeChambeau definitely have more upside than pretty much anyone in this name, that's who I'll kind of be ending my list with.
Yeah, same here. Like, there's a couple good guys in here, but it's just a lot of first timers, a lot of old guys that haven't really. They're just playing in this week just because they're allowed to, because they are the past champions. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's just really hard for me to pick like a Trevor Immelman or Jose Maria Olazabal, just because that more than likely they're going to miss the cut or barely make the cut and finish around 50th or something like that. It's just not worth it to go right down to the minimum. Yeah, it's just not worth playing like those guys at all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Who'd you say you got winning this week?
I think for my one and done, I want to say Justin Rose. If I'm not allowed to pick Tiger, like I really, really want Tiger to win, but I think outside of that, I think Rose will be my pick, and I think Matsuyama will be my dark horse. And then for my long shot, I think Brendan Steele or Ross Fisher will be the long shots there.
Yeah, I think Dustin Johnson's my top pick as far as a popular name. I think Rahm's a little bit contrarian, and then I agree with you. I think Steele's the guy for a long shot that could pull it off.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see his name on the leaderboard for sure on Sunday.
No, definitely not. So that's going to wrap it up for us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. You can check out Chris's article, which will be up a little bit later today. And good luck. And be sure also to head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. Optimizer is up and rolling for Masters as well. So that's it for us, and good luck this week.